Jesus Disciples Seminary. Endtimes, Section 2, Endtime Views, Positions, and Chronology.
Teacher Bob Reed.
We've heard a lot about what man has to say about the end of the world, the end times, the rapture, the second coming of Christ, etc. This course will focus on what God says in His Word and specifically what Jesus Christ says. The following two scriptures will be a guide to prevent us from getting off into error. Revelation 19 verse 10. And I fell at His feet to worship Him. And He said unto me, See thou do it not, I am thy fellow servant, and of thy brethren that have the testimony of Jesus. Worship God, for the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. The heart of Old Testament prophecy is centered on Jesus Christ, even though none of the New Testament was written. It is not centered on anything else. Remember that Jesus Christ is the center as we read Scripture and interpret what it says. 1 Peter 1 verses 10 to 11. 10 of which salvation the prophets have inquired and searched diligently, who prophesied of the grace that should come unto you. 11 Searching what manner of time the Spirit of Christ which was in them did signify, when it testified beforehand the sufferings of Christ, and the glory that should follow. All of the Old Testament prophets themselves had in them the Spirit of Christ, a relationship with, not a literal cohabitation due to sin still being present in unregenerate OT saints. The sufferings of Christ. Glory that should follow, Christ's kingdom. Men's writings today about the end times seem to center on everything but Christ. They focus on Israel, the Antichrist, a tribulation period, etc. These all rob us of what the OT prophets spoke.
And you see a chart, a drawing, you have the pre-trib position right at the top, giving you the various letters and what the pre-trib has. And this is the most popular of all positions, but it only came in existence after the turn of the century, the 1800s. We know where it originated. The person who wrote the book, he wrote it back in the 1500s. A copy of it got into the hands of the Brethren movement over in England. It was translated in English. And one of the brothers brought it to the United States. It was picked up by C.I. Schofield, and he began to print these notes in his Bible. The first edition was back in 1906. So in this country, this was the first introduction of the pre-trib position, and the whole church basically went to it, except for the Calvinistic associated churches. Most of the Lutherans believe just as I teach. Most of the Dutch Reform and so forth believe just as I teach. That's been the standard doctrine of the church since Christ ascended back to heaven, is the very position we're teaching. But this new position came in, and it was such a sensation, created so many fears and tickled so many ears, and Schofield put the notes in there as if it was the Scripture, and everybody began to believe it after 1906 in this country. But it never appeared in written English form until after the 1800s, around 1826. But it's swept the whole world, it's taught all over the world, but it's an invention of man, fits into the hand of the devil because the information in it is erroneous, even though the same people are used and some of the same terms. It nevertheless creates an entirely different scenario than God intended. Mid-tribulation means instead of the church being raptured at the beginning of the 7 years of tribulation, that they're raptured 3.5 years in, and then the Great Tribulation starts. Post-tribulation means that the tribulation is going to happen after the 7 years. The historical view, it's about the same as the pre-trib. If you ever read the historical, it was believed by some, but always a minority of people, because it was always looking at the historical, natural facts of unfolding things did not listen to what Christ was teaching, nor the apostles. So you can refer to that chart to cover those three views. On page 3, we have a kind of definition of the preterist view, the futurist view, historical and spiritualist view. Now, the spiritualist view is not spiritualism, it's the spiritual view, and that's what we teach. And we want to make sure that we understand that the kingdom we're in is spiritual. All the events that he's talking about are to be spiritual events. We're living in the world, but we're not of it. We're to keep our eyes and heart and mind focused on those things that are which from above, and we're not a sinful or an adulterous generation that's seeking after natural signs. Then there's some views down in the middle of the sheet pertaining to the coming of Christ in regards to the millennium. And the premillennial means that Christ is going to come back to the earth, and then the millennium starts. Postmillennial, which is believed by Pat Robertson and many others, we enter into this golden age, and that's what most of the church is being conditioned to, that we're just going to enter into the millennium for 1,000 years, and then Christ comes back at the end. The amillennial position, which is the name that was used to describe the correct view of God, meaning no millennium, is the correct view. No natural millennium, no literal 1,000 years. If you'll go look up the word 1,000 when it's used in Revelation chapter 20, where it's used only for to talk about this millennium, 1,000 year, you'll see in the Greek the word 1,000 is an unlimited, undetermined amount of time. It's plural. It's thousands, but nobody wants to stay with that. They want a literal 1,000 year. It has to do with the reign of Jesus Christ from the cross until he comes again. It's not trying to be specifically stating there's an actual, literal, natural 1,000 years. And so it's called amillennial, and we would line right up with that. I don't use that term in teaching people. I don't want to get into terms that are not in the Bible like that, but nevertheless, amillennial position that was held by the church from the cross on is the correct one. Then at the bottom part, I've given you some different ways to mix the terms and views and interpretations up, and so you'll find every kind of variation that you can imagine out there. But the pre-trib is the most popular of them all. Page 4, here is a drawing that shows the proper chronology of the unfolding of the end times according to Jesus Christ. According to Daniel, the only one that prophesied the exact time of everything, and it matches everything taught in the New Testament by the New Testament men. We put letters above and numbers below, and you can go through and look at that because that's what we're going to teach you. I don't want to get involved in going through it step by step now. I want you to read it. By the time we're through with the end times, you'll be able to draw this drawing here right out of your head. Without using any letters, you'll be able to draw all the sticks and arrows and put the events over, because the end times is very, very simple. It isn't complicated at all. A child can learn it, and learn it very quickly.
Search Jesus Disciples Seminary at Amazon.com for a companion textbook to these videos.